In the today's session, we'll just talk on these areas: how that enterprise structure we have in the Fusion applications, and what is the concept of roles, and how the user information can be managed, and the privileges are given, and what is the meaning of functional setup manager (FSM) and rapid implementation and data conversions in Fusion applications. Just we'll talk on these few points. In the next session, directly we'll start with the system, user creation, project creation, and what are the sequence we follow to do the implementation in the when you take a real time just fresh instance. So from where we start, and by following which sequence we'll start with the system configuration. Those points will start from the tomorrow session. So if you don't have any questions from yesterday's session, we can start with the today these scheduled discussions, whatever the agenda.
Yeah, hi Lakshman. I have
Yeah, please.
one question.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, from EBS to Oracle Fusion Cloud Finance. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, Bharat, you can go ahead.
Yeah, from EBS Financials to EBS Financials to Oracle Fusion Cloud Financials. So functionality-wise, is there any major changes, or it's just kind of enhancement, or few upgrades, or how it is?
Yeah, we have few enhancements, and there are few new functionalities also that added in the Fusion application when you compare with EBS. And one more, the negative point is whatever you have in EBS, few functions not yet developed in Fusion. What you could see in EBS, few
Oh,
functionalities still not available in the Fusion. Still Oracle is working on that. That's how we have a difference.
okay. So that means the existing functionality will carry over to Fusion Cloud Financials as well.
Yes.
Like 60 to 70% we can say.
No, you can say
No.
90%.
Oh, okay, fine. Thank you.
Because we discussed in yesterday's session, ASTIs they taken. ASTIs they taken wherever they have a need of, upgrade, enhancing. They did it, they introduce some new functionalities. That's how we have. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Lakshman, this is Niranjan Lakshman. So
Yeah.
can you give me the examples like what the functionalities which were not available in cloud financials? So you said like 10% of the functionality is not available, right?
No,
So can you give me
10% no. 10% no. ASTIs they
okay?
taken 90%. That's what we are discussing. The rest they did some changes they taken from other ERPs concepts, and that's how they introduced in the Fusion application. It's not just I'm not saying 10% we don't have. So we have most of the functionalities, but very few. Take example.
Okay,
Say deposits in receivables. In EBS we have a deposit, right? Deposit and guarantee.
correct.
That functionality we don't have in Fusion receivables. And
Okay,
the other functionality,
is replaced with some other functionality with the
no,
deposits and guarantees?
that we just as of now in the implementations we are using just going with a workaround, some on
Okay,
account receipt. Whenever customer make the payment, since we don't have deposit to record, we'll just create the receipt
you
and
do the on-account.
on account.
Yeah,
Whenever there is customer transaction, we will release and will apply. That is a practice we are following for workaround.
there's a workaround you are following. Okay,
Yeah.
I got it.
There are very few. There are very few which are not available in Fusion. Okay, which you could see in the EBS case.
Okay, Lakshman, thank you.
Fine, thanks.
So even the look and feel wise, it has been changed.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the setups and other functionality, it remains same, right? As you told.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, fine.
Hey, hi Lakshman, this is Kiran here.
Yeah, correct.
It's a simple question. After the trainings, will we be able to take the Oracle certifications? And basically, I'm from a non-EBS background from PeopleSoft. So how easy it will be for me to grasp through all these trainings?
Yeah. See, after this training, you'll be able to work on this Fusion applications as a consultant. you can involve in the project and you can work on implementation or support project. But when I talk about certification, the guys who are already working on this EBS or Fusion also, even they also require separate preparation for certification. Okay, by attending this training, you can take the advantage where you will be knowing many things, but still some sort of preparation is required. Okay, this is a point we have to
Oh,
discuss here.
okay, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine. Any other questions from anyone, please?
Hello,
Yeah.
Lakshmanji. My name is Lakshmi.
Yeah.
Just like that, in continuation with the question he was asking, what would be the certification exam if I want to take the examination?
Okay. Fine. Just 1 second. Any other questions from anyone, please? Okay, fine. Seems to no questions from anyone. So now we'll just talk about these few points. First, we'll look at enterprise structure. Okay. So when I talk about enterprise structure and the Fusion applications, okay, it's more or less similar to EBS multi-org structure only. We know how that multi-org structure can be can be implemented in the system. So when I talk about EBS, just 1 second. EBS multi-org structure. When you talk about EBS multi-org structure, we have a top level business group. Under business group, primary ledger. I'm talking about release 12, not 11i. And legal entities. Under legal entity, we'll have a operating unit. Under operating units, inventory organizations. Okay, so this is standard multi-org structure we have in EBS case. When you look at Fusion, how the same organization structure we can find in the Fusion applications. In the Fusion applications, the name they changed, the usage, just we don't call it as multi-org structure. Here we call as enterprise structure. Okay, we call it as enterprise structure. So within the multi-org structure, we have in the top level BZ prime under BZ primary ledger, legal entity, operating entity, inventory organization. The same, and you compare with that what we have here. In the top level, we'll find enterprise. Under enterprise, we'll have a primary ledger. Okay, before that, we have a divisions concept. Divisions we have. Under divisions, we'll have a primary ledger. Under primary ledger, legal entity. Under legal entity, business units. Under business units, inventory organizations. So this is how we can find the enterprise structure in the Fusion application. The top level will have enterprise. Under enterprise, you can have a divisions, and under divisions, we'll have a primary ledger. Under primary ledger, legal entity, and under legal entity, business units. In the EBS, whatever we are calling as operating units, for the same their name they changed as a business units. Under business units, we'll have a inventory organization. We'll go one by one here. So in case of EBS, we can create multiple business groups. Multiple business groups where you can map your HRMS related solutions at that level. Primarily, we can manage the employee information. When I talk about Fusion Enterprise, within the Fusion Enterprise, you can just, the first point is, in case of EBS, you can create multiple business groups, but in Fusion, you can have only one enterprise for one instance. One instance. In Fusion, we will, instead of calling it as an instance, we call as a pod. Okay, the instance only we call as a pod, POD pod. That means for one pod, you can have only one enterprise. And within that enterprise, you can have a solutions country specific. So if you take example of EBS, say you are doing the implementation for 10 countries, you can go with a 10 different business groups for each country. Okay, each country one business group you can create. For 10 countries, 10 business groups you can create. But in the Fusion, so you can create only one enterprise. Within that enterprise, country specific HR solutions you can manage by using HCM applications. Okay, HCM, human capital management, in case of EBS HRMS. Okay, you can have a country specific solutions under enterprise, but for one instance you can have only one enterprise. Enterprise level primarily will be setting the related to HR and payroll related configuration. We know in case of EBS also will define the business group. Within the business group, as a part of business group info, we'll be setting how employee number need to be generated, contingent worker, applicant number generation, and other key flex fields structures. Okay, the people group and position, job, competence, all these flex fields, and the currency specification, country, all the details will be providing as a part of business group info in EBS. Similar to that, you can just set enterprise. So how you are going to manage your HCM process. By default, Oracle will provide the default enterprise based on our HCM solution. How we are going to manage, you can override. Okay, whatever you set at enterprise level, down the line, whatever the configuration you do as a part of HCM, human capital management, so there you will be able to override whatever you set in the enterprise. Those will get defaulted for some legislative data groups. It's completely related to HCM, human capital management. You'll be able to override. That's how you can manage the solution. So here, when I talk about division, it's all about it's optional one in the enterprise structure. So whatever here we mentioned, all are mandatory except division. Divisions are optional. If you want to have a segment called as a division within the chart of account, in that case you can have a division as a part of enterprise structure to represent how that your organization can be structured and managed in the relevant business process. It can be HRMS or say HCM or projects in other areas. To represent the enterprise structure, you can have divisions. If you are not going to use the concept called as division within your chart of account structure, even if you are going to have a division within your enterprise, there won't be any use. So this is the point we have to understand. Finally, the point which we have to understand is divisions are optional within the enterprise structure. Without divisions, you can design your enterprise structure. So any questions here, please? And another point is to understand the divisions. Each and every vertical of business you may take as a division, or specific geographical area you can take as a division. Say you are into different businesses, each business you can take as one division, or else you are operating your business across the globe, you can take different divisions as APAC, EMEA, and different regions you can take as a different divisions if you want to use that division into your enterprise structure. Okay, so any questions on this enterprise and divisions from anyone, please?
Yeah, Lakshman, this is Niranjan Lakshman. So Lakshman, so I have a question on the enterprise. Say example like, are you hearing?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so say example like we are planning to implement only financials now, and then later we will do the HCM configurations or HCM implementation as a phase 2.
Yep.
So now while doing the financial implementation, I don't know the exact requirement. So how the enterprise structure look like? What is the the requirements for HCM side?
Okay.
So how do you do that one? So we need to create certain employees, even financial module, right?
Yeah.
So how do you do that one? Can we override?
I got your question. So it's very simple. When you are going to implement only financials as a part of the instance, okay, as a part of the product, so they'll be just providing the default enterprise. Since you are not going to implement any HCM, you don't need to go and change anything. Okay.
Okay.
Very generic information, generic preferences or generic defaults they'll be setting as a part of enterprise. If you remember in EBS we have will be in the fresh instance will be getting the setup business group, right?
Correct.
The same way here they'll be providing the default enterprise.
Okay.
In case of EBS, that you can edit the name and you can give the classifications and you can make use of it, or else you can create your own, right?
Okay, right. I
It is
got
the
it.
Fusion
So
one.
even
Yeah.
even if you buy the license for both HCM and financials together, both the offerings, but the first phase we'll do the only financials. In that stage as well, like we'll have the same option, right? You use
Yes,
the
yes, yes.
default one.
You
Yeah.
may,
Okay.
you may not have the license for HCM, still you will have access to enterprise definition. It's a very just a simple task definition. So by
Okay.
default, there'll be basic information. If you are going to implement HCM, you set relevant preferences, controls, and defaults. Accordingly, you can do the further configuration within the HCM. If you are not going to use HCM, if you are going to implement only financials, still that enterprise default setup would be available. You may change with your client name. You may just override the name. Oracle will
Yeah,
provide as
enterprise
a
name only.
default enterprise.
Okay.
Now, if you are going to implement for XYZ company, XYZ enterprise, but it's not going to impact too much. Only the point is when you talk about enterprise, it will be connected when you are working on financials related to employee creation. Okay, employee creation only. So system will point to this enterprise how that preference is set to related to employee creation and employee number generation. Other than that, there is no much dependency for financials related to this enterprise.
Okay, Lakshman, I got it.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Any other questions here, please?
What is pod, Lakshman? I didn't
Instance.
get the.
Instance.
Oh,
Instance
okay,
only in Fusion we are calling as pod.
fine.
Yeah. Any other questions here, please? And divisions, it's optional one. If you are going to use the one of the segment as a division within your chart of accounts, then you can have the same uh, as enterprise structure definition, so that you will be able to map and you will be able to generate the reports. If you are not going to have a divisions within the chart of accounts, there is no opportunity of tracking the financial transaction, so that you cannot prepare any reports accordingly. Okay. So the next element here is primary ledger. It remains same as EBS concept only. So whatever the transaction you want to record in the system, okay, that can be possible with the only primary ledger we'll be creating. And when we are creating primary ledger, there are some changes compared to EBS in terms of calendar creation and chart of accounts. They introduce a concept called a chart of account instance. We'll discuss all those points and we'll be defining. But in terms of when you go with the comparison with EBS and the Fusion, so same as it is. However, we have a concept called as primary ledger that we have in Fusion applications. Legal entity concept also remains same, and business group. Okay, business unit. So in EBS, we are calling as operating unit, that we are calling in the Fusion as a business unit. Just they change the name. And there are a few other points also which you have to understand when you are working on Fusion applications which are related to business unit. We'll see in the system there is a concept called as business unit, business functions. You can set controls. Based on that, you will be able to do the setups only for the specific modules. That sort of controls they introduce in the Fusion application, which we don't see in the EBS case. Okay, that just name they changed, that is a point you can take as of now. And other element is, other component is inventory organizations, the same logic, but inventories and all these inventory related, we don't have in EBS. We'll be creating the master item, item master inventory and actual inventories and item creation. Everything we'll do from inventory application. In Fusion application, we don't have any inventory application. So the inventory application, they're replaced with product management application. Okay, product information management or product information hub you can call. So that some new application they introduced. Anyway, when we work on the P2P and O2C cycles, we should go through it and we have to do the required configuration. How it is different from EBS, we'll be able to understand. When you look at enterprise structure, these are the points you have to understand. This is a hierarchy. Just I written one by one, but it's exactly hierarchy how you see in case of EBS. Top level enterprise under the divisions, under divisions primary ledgers, under primary ledgers legal entities, under legal entities business units, under business units inventory organization. Out of this hierarchy, divisions are optional. So any questions on this, please?
Lakshman,
Yeah, please. I think seems to there is some issue with the audio. Fine. Any questions, please?
Yeah, Lakshman, this is Niranjan Lakshman. So how do you link the chart of accounts or divisions with enterprise structure division?
So you can have a division as one segment within the chart of accounts.
Yeah, correct. How do you link with the enterprise structure division?
No, you cannot link. You cannot link. See, you have a 4 division.
But you said like no, if you use the enterprise, if you opt like division as a segment in our chart of accounts, we should have the divisions as well, right?
Simple.
Enterprise structure.
Yeah, simple. You have a 4 divisions. Just you created 4 divisions as an enterprise structure. Within the enterprise structure, you created 4 divisions. But you don't get an opportunity of selecting specific division. The transactions belongs to which division. Until unless the 4 divisions you are going to maintain within the chart of accounts by creating the segment called as division. You have to replicate the same, whatever the divisions you have as a part of enterprise, that you have to create. There is no direct point which you connect your enterprise structure level division values with your chart of account values. We have to just understand and we have to map that you have to take into the system.
No, so I will give the example. Take the project accounting. So if you use the project accounting as a segment, so generally we don't use the project module. Okay, if you use the project module, generally we don't use the project accounting segment.
Yeah,
the project as a segment.
It's very simple. If you are not going to use project accounting application, and still if you have a requirement of just recording the transaction which would be very specific to project, in that case you may have one segment called as project. Or else still if
Correct.
to go more detail level, you may have additional segment called as task also. Okay.
Correct.
In that case you don't use it. So in that scenario, okay, you have a segments here. And again, if you are going to use project accounting application, you can stop using these segments. So that's how the logic will have, right? So
that's what. Why don't the same logic will apply here? Enterprise. You said like the divisions. If you define the divisions in our chart of accounts, and you should have the.
Let me finalize that point based on your question. So if you are going to have a divisions within our chart of accounts, even if you ignore the divisions in the enterprise, there won't be an issue. It is just for representation purpose.
Correct.
Take projects only. In the projects, you will create expenditure organization hierarchy, task owning.
Yeah, projects I am good. Projects I don't need.
That is the reason just I am taking that example only. So if you have your enterprise with this specification, all those levels you can specify. The divisions also you will be able to see. You will see the project organizations which will be under business units. The business units will be under legal entities, and that would be under these divisions. That sort of hierarchy will be able to use within that projects or HRMS. If you are ignoring this division as a part of enterprise, you don't get an opportunity of using this hierarchy. Whatever the reality, you cannot use it. But still you will be able to track financial transactions since the same you have within the segment.
Yeah, best practice, what you are trying to say is best practice is we should have the divisions if you use the division as a segment. Okay.
Yes, if you are going to have a division segment, better you can have the same as enterprise structure level. If you ignore also, there won't be an issue. If you have, there will be advantage where you can represent that as your enterprise structure wherever it is required for reporting or any kind of controlling, wherever it is applicable.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that is a point. Fine. Any other questions on this enterprise structure, please?
Lakshman, Sanjay here. Today I got the link very late, that is 8:30. I hope the class got started around 8 o'clock, I believe, as per the timing.
Yep, Sanjay, that we can discuss a bit later. Please don't mind. So we shared the link on time, but somehow it might be missing. I'm not very sure. I'll check with the team. Any questions on this enterprise structure, please? I'll be sharing this today's video. You can go through it. If you have any questions, definitely I'll be available to discuss on that. Okay. I'll talk to the team why you got late. I just shared on time. Okay. We are really sorry if you received a bit late today. Any questions on this, please? So I'm just requesting for questions if you have any questions. Any issues we have, we'll discuss. No issues. Fine. Seems to no questions here. So we'll just move on to next topic. Okay, so Fusion roles. Here my question is, do you think we have a roles concept in EBS?
No, we don't have.
Any other answers?
So the roles in the sense we have like menus, functions, and responsibilities basically in EBS.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Any roles concept we have any?
No.
Anyone? I could see a good number of participants in the meeting, but I don't hear any answers from anyone. Do you think we have a roles concept in EBS?
I thought in Fusion, that's the whole concept, right? Rule-based access control.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I'm just checking, do we have in EBS or not?
Yeah, I think we have in EBS, in Oracle Identity Management, OIM and OEM.
No, that is OEM and those are totally different that we have in EBS. If you want to use, you can use in EBS also, but those we have as a part of Fusion. Okay. Right. If client wants to use, they can use in EBS also. Those are separate tools to manage their security and administration part. Fine. So we have a roles concept in EBS also. Okay, we have roles concept in EBS, but it is just limited to the specific applications. If you are working on supplier portal, or if you are working on some self-service applications, or you take simple example when you are creating to create the bank account, you have to give certain roles to that legal entity. Okay, we'll be providing the role related grants, privileges will be giving. That's how the roles concept we have in EBS, but it is just very much limited. Okay, it's very much limited in terms of usage. Most of the security will be managed with the menus only in EBS. Roles concept we have in EBS. Okay, but it's a very limited areas we will be using, mostly will be using for self-service applications. Okay, in the procurement we will be using, and the supplier portal and other applications wherever the role related privileges will be giving from user management. Through user management you can provide the roles to the users. But in Fusion what they did is the complete security, okay, they introduced with the roles concept only. You can manage anything in the Fusion application for user access or any controlling through roles only. So here the Fusion, what are the roles concept we have that we call as RBAC, role based access control. Role based access control. Okay, so in other words you can say this is nothing but Fusion security, you can call as security. So Fusion security will run based on the roles, you can call as RBAC, role based access control. So before we talk about this role based access control in the Fusion application, just we'll go through few points related to EBS. When you talk about EBS, how the security can be managed, it's a very simple. We'll have a menus, right? The menu consists of what? Submenus. Within the submenu we can have
functions. The
functions will have certain privileges to have access to specific form or any relevant processes. Fine. So this is how we have this within the EBS. This is how the security can be managed. When you just compare the same with the Fusion, so we have a roles here in Fusion. We have a different type of roles called as job roles, duty roles, data roles, and abstract roles. Okay, we have these four type of roles. Okay, in EBS, whatever the menu we have, that would be equal to job roles. So for payables, we'll have a one menu, receivables will have one menu, or else you can create the custom menus. In the same way, in Fusion applications, we have a roles called as job, duty, data, and abstract roles. So job roles are equal to EBS menus. Duty roles are equal to EBS submenus, and data roles are equal to some definition called as responsibility. We'll talk on that. Say for example, you are creating the responsibility, you will be selecting the menu. Okay, you will create responsibility by selecting the menu. Can you use that responsibility directly by assigning to the user? Can you work on this? Can you create some transactions after creating the responsibility and assigning to the user, or do we need to do some other activity as a mandatory?
See, we
Yeah,
have
so
to set some profile options, Lakshman.
Yeah, what is that?
Possible.
What is the exact point? Say, for example, we have GL responsibility. I created GL responsibility by selecting the menu called as GL super user, and I created responsibility assigned to the user. Can we use that responsibility? Can we record the transactions within that responsibility?
No, we need to provide the certain mandatory assign the certain mandatory profile options like GL ledger name and like business group, HR security.
No, yeah, that primarily just we have to assign the primary ledger, right?
Yes, ledger
In the
name.
primary ledger, you can start creating the transaction within the GL, creating the journals or some relevant activities, right? So
Correct.
For responsibility, you have to assign ledger, say primary ledger. Okay. So responsibility we have to create by including the menu, and we have to assign the primary ledger to responsibility. Then we will be able to work on that responsibility. So that means the responsibility will have access to certain functionalities through the menu which we included within that responsibility, and when we are accessing that responsibility, we'll have access to primary ledger also, because we are assigning by using the GL ledger name profile option. By using that primary ledger with the certain privileges what we have through responsibility, we can record the transactions. So this logic we have in the Fusion applications with data roles concept. Okay, the data roles concept is equal to this. So data roles is equal to EBS responsibility, where your primary ledger is assigned or operating unit is assigned. So here in this responsibility we have a menu, but within the data role we'll have a role, we'll have a job role plus primary ledger. If it is a GL related access, if it is related to subledgers, we'll have a BU. Data role means the job role. Job role is equal to menu. In this responsibility we'll have a menu. The same way, the job role is equal to menu. In this data role also we'll have a job role. So here to responsibility we are assigning the primary ledger or operating unit. The same way, within this data role we'll have a primary ledger and a business unit, or only primary ledger if it is related to GL related. So this data role is equal to responsibility, which we can use to record the transaction where the primary ledger and operating units are assigned. Okay. So job role is equal to menu, duty roles are equal to submenu, and here we'll have a function. So within the duty role we'll have a functions in Fusion application. And when you talk about data role, so data role means we'll have access to specific data, that is nothing but your specific primary ledger or business unit as per Fusion, as per EBS operating unit. So that data role is equal to responsibility. Which responsibility you already assigned primary ledger. If there is no primary ledger association with this responsibility, okay, you cannot record any transaction. Here within the data role, if you don't have a primary ledger or business unit, only job role will remain, just its menu. Okay, so why we are creating the responsibility in EBS? Directly we cannot assign the primary ledger to menu, right? Directly we cannot assign primary ledger to menu. That is the reason we are creating the responsibility, we are assigning the primary ledger to responsibility, so that the primary ledger will get connected with the menu which is available within the responsibility. But in the Fusion, we no need to create the responsibility. So directly we have option to map our primary ledger with the job roles. The primary ledger you can connect with the job role, or else the business unit you can map with the job role. So once you do the mapping, that we call as data role. So abstract roles are very generic roles. When you talk about job roles, duty roles, or data roles, these all are specific to application. But when you talk about abstract roles, this is a common role. This is very common role which can be associated with your employee. Best example is employee role, we call as abstract role. So this abstract role will provide the self-service access. So when employee is working in the organization, they need access to different uh, areas. Okay, so they may raise the requisition if they need something, and they may just check their payslip or HR related information, their employee record, and some expense reports. For all that sort of privileges we can get through abstract role. If you assign this abstract role to any user, the user will have access to different self-service privileges. For that reason, we'll be using the abstract role, and by assigning the abstract role, we'll give the access to the user to submit the reports also. Okay, in case of EBS, so if you have a responsibility, from any responsibility you can have access to, okay, SRS window, standard request submission window, where you can run the reports or programs. But in the Fusion, so you have to assign the role called as abstract role to the user, then only the similar form access user can have to run the reports or programs. Okay, so these are the points we have to understand. Here we have basically how many type of roles? 4 type of roles we have: job role, duty role, data role, and abstract role. Just for our understanding, here just we mentioned once again. Okay, there are the 4 type of roles. So a job
Lakshman,
role,
question here.
please.
So on a high level, it is 4 types of roles, right? And data role is basically job role plus assignment to
Correct.
PL and BU. So why would it be treated like a separate role? Because data role is just nothing but assignment, right?
Correct.
So does that mean that job role is nothing? Because if you're comparing to EBS, there's no value without adding menu, I mean, the main reason is like we need responsibility to connect to the primary ledger. So what is the point of having just job role? Because ultimately we'll have to assign it to primary ledger or BU anyways.
Correct. See, in EBS, why we are getting responsibility, you don't have any option where you can directly connect primary ledger with your menu, right? So as an interface, you are using the responsibility.
No, I'm clear there. In Fusion, ultimately we will have to connect a job role to PL or BU, right?
Correct.
In order to record transactions.
Yes.
Which is nothing but data role. I'm trying to understand the exact comparison between job role and data role. Yes. I understand data role is nothing but assignment, but what is the point of having job roles specifically?
So if you have a job roles, those only you will be able to map. Okay, you require job roles. So few job roles may require this assignment, few job roles may not require this assignment. Take example, system administrator responsibility in EBS. Do you assign something to that?
Okay.
We don't provide data access to that, right? Because you don't record the transactions within the system administrator. That is just for configuration purpose, administration purpose you'll be using.
So is it fair enough to say that job roles are like non-transaction roles?
No. The job roles, you can have one job role called as payables manager. Okay, the payables manager, if you go to payables manager, you will have all the functions, invoice creation, payment creation, all these functions you can have. When you can utilize those functions? By assigning business unit to that job role, you'll be able to record the transactions within the job role for specific BU. You will have a job roles for transactional and non-transactional.
Okay, only when they get assigned, you will group them as data roles.
Exactly. When you assign something to that, just I am taking here example as primary ledger and business unit, and you may assign your inventory organization also, or cost organization. Okay, some other different assignments also you can do based on the area. Maybe HR organization you can assign. Depending on area which applications we are working, we'll be assigning the relevant data accesses to job roles.
Yeah, okay, fine. I'm just trying to stick it to my brain that why they called it like a separate role where they're just assigning. They're not basically trying to do something different. They're just assigning a job role to something and calling it as data role.
Yeah. Why they are see the meaning is data role. The role will have access to specific data. That is the reason they are calling as a data role. I have a job role called as payables manager. With that just that role I cannot do anything until unless I'll assign some business unit. Whenever I assign that business unit, the role will have access to specific BU data. Your data is nothing but primary ledger or business unit.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
So any other questions here, please?
Yeah, Lakshman, this is Niranjan Lakshman.
Yeah, please.
So do we have the profile option concept as well in Fusion?
Yes, we have a profile option concept, but we don't use those profile options how we use in case of EBS. Okay.
Okay, then how do you link this job role with the PU?
Yeah, without profile option you can do that. They given the security contest concept that you can specify and you can do it. So when we are going to do this entire enterprise structure also, you no need to use single profile option. When you do the multi-org setups in EBS, we'll use a few mandatory profile options like HR user type, right? GL ledger name,
business
operating
security
profile.
Yeah,
they all will be using, but here you no need to use this single profile option also to create your enterprise structure in the Fusion. Okay, if you want to set something as a default, if you want to set some privileges or yes or no, only in those scenarios we'll be using the profile options.
Okay.
Fine. So we'll see that how that exactly that can be handled. But for now, the point here is the profile option usage is very much reduced in the Fusion applications.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So any other questions here, please?
So Lakshman, are you saying that job role is a superset and data role is a subset?
Yes. The same example I taken here. So job role is equal to menu and duty role is submenu. That means multiple submenus we can have within the menu. In the same way, you'll have a one or multiple duty roles within the job role. Okay. You can assign the primary ledger or business unit to only job role, not to duty role. You take example in EBS also. So you want to give access to specific user for specific submenu. In that case, what we'll do, even if you want to give access to specific submenu, you have to create the custom menu. We'll create the custom menu. Within the custom menu, we'll be selecting the one or multiple submenus or specific functions. Same way here also, if you want to give the access to specific duty role for specific user, by creating the job role only, we can give the privileges. So job role would be mandatory if you want to provide any access to any user for the all multiple duty roles or specific duty role or specific privileges.
So does Fusion come with already set up job roles?
Yeah.
Or can we create new ones?
Yes, we can create. We can create.
Okay.
I'm just going to talk on that point also. There is some other points to add here.
Sure.
So fine, seems no question. Yeah, now we'll talk on that. So here we have these four type of roles. Okay, four type of roles. So job roles are seeded, duty roles also seeded, and abstract roles also seeded. Data roles the system will create automatically. Data roles will be created by system automatically. When system will create? When you create the primary ledger, automatically system will create data roles. When you create the business unit, system will create the data roles automatically. Okay, this is how it happens in Fusion applications. So you can create your own custom job roles, custom duty roles, custom abstract roles. You can create custom data roles through manual process. But standard process, what system will do is it will create automatically. Say you created primary ledger. So how many primary ledger related roles you have? For all those roles, the system will assign that primary ledger. So when you create business unit, the BU specific roles means payables related, receivables related, project costing, billing, purchasing, order management. So which will be mapped at BU level or OU level as per EBS. For all those application related, what are the job roles we have? For all the job roles, system will assign business unit automatically. There is some additional other setup which will decide for which roles the business unit need to be assigned and which roles the primary ledger need to be assigned. Okay, that logic we have as a separate templates and all. We'll talk on that. Okay, so this is what we have to understand: job, duty, data, and abstract roles. The job roles, duty roles, abstract roles are seeded roles. Data roles will be created whenever we create primary ledger or business unit, and you can customize as per a requirement any role. You can create your own custom job role, duty role, abstract role. In the same way, data roles also you can create through manual process. Okay, through manual process also you can create those, you can call as custom data roles. Sorry, custom data roles. So these 4 type of roles we have up to release 11. Okay, up to release 11. The release 7 sorry, release 7, 8, 9, 10 up to 11 we have these 4 type of roles. From 12 they changed it. From release 12 we have only the 3 roles only. We don't have any data roles concept. System is not going to create from 12 data roles. Okay, we'll have a job roles, duty roles, abstract roles. So somebody raised the question, I'm not sure who, I think why we are calling as data roles. Okay, now that will become very much valid here. So this just they removed data roles concept where system is not going to create the data role. So which role you want to assign, which ledger, for which role you want to assign your business unit, you can go and do that assignment. Since just we are assigning that, we are not going to call as a separate role called as data role. So from
I think that makes sense.
Yes. The reason this there are many issues with that. When system is automatically creates the data roles, the linking will be missing, and there are many issues where the Oracle come across with the user, with the client usage process. So that is the reason that process they removed, and they introduce a concept similar to profile option only, but not profile option usage will be having similar to profile option. In EBS, what we do, we'll create the primary ledger, we'll assign the primary ledger to responsibility to user. In the similar way, here without using the profile option, you can assign your primary ledger to job role, or you can assign the business unit to job role. So finally they made the roles are 3 types only: job role, duty role, and abstract role. So anything you can assign to your job role only. Okay, you will be assigned to job role. That we'll see in the system how it works. Okay, just note that point. Till release 11 we have a 4 type of roles, including job roles, data roles. From release 12 they removed the concept called as data roles. Okay, only we have 3 type of roles: job, duty, and abstract roles. So
Lakshman, quick clarifications here. In the release 11, so that means you mentioned that the seeded wise, it's going to be job roles, duty roles, and abstract roles. The data roles gets created upon creation of ledger, primary ledger, right?
yes, you are right.
Okay, so in that case, is it fair to say that like when it is out of the box, only you get 3 roles, upon configuring the system, you get the data roles automatically?
No, no, no. That in case of up to release 11 it happens, prior releases.
Yeah, I'm clear. I'm asking about the 11 itself because there was one interview question I couldn't crack it. So
Okay, yeah, tell me.
I'm trying to make it clear here. That's it.
Okay. Yeah. Just could you please repeat your question? I'm just thinking talking about release 12.
Right. My question is, in the release 11 itself, you mentioned initially that 3 are seeded roles and data role is more like upon creation of primary ledger, these will get automatically created.
Yes,
so does that mean that data role is not available out of the box?
Yes, exactly. If you have a primary ledger, once you create primary ledger, this comes into picture.
Okay.
All right, clear. It will come into picture. If you create your inventory, it will come into picture. How it will get generated? By using the job role plus your primary ledger, the combination.
Right. Yeah, I'm clear on that. So now in the R12, basically, they felt it is redundancy that they removed it, right?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, fine. Any other questions here, please? Okay, fine. No questions. Okay, here the next point here we have users. We'll talk about the users, how you can manage. So when I talk about users, when I talk about users in EBS, okay, so the users concept, what we'll do is we'll create the user in the sysadmin and we'll be assigning the employee to that user if required. If the user is going to involve in the relevant business transaction where some approval should work or some other control should work, we'll be assigning the employee to the user. The normal practice for every user will be associating the employee to address who is just performing the transaction in the system. Okay, in the Fusion case, just users are classified into two types. Users are classified into two types: implementation users. The second classification is employee. Okay, we have two type of users in Fusion application: implementation user and employee user. So implementation user we can create from security console. So this is one of the feature which is equal to our sysadmin. In EBS we have a sysadmin, right, where you can create the menus, users, responsibility assignments, all you can do. Equal to that we have a security console. Within the security console you can create the implementation user. Implementation user you can create from security console. Employee user you can create from HCM, human capital management, nothing but HRMS. If you create implementation user from security console, just you can create the user only. You cannot associate employee with that user. Okay, if you create the user from security console, that is just user definition. You cannot assign employee to the implementation user. But if you create the employee user from HCM, the definition itself employee plus user. That means reality when you say employee user sorry, when you create the employee user, the meaning here is you will be creating the employee. For that employee you will be giving the username. That definition we call as employee user. Here you don't need to do any assignment. The definition itself will have association, who is the user, and the user is associated with which employee. That sort of definition will be creating from HCM side, that we call as employee user. Implementation user will be creating from security console. Okay, after creating the user from security console, for implementation purpose you cannot assign any employee to that user. So when you start with our implementation, always will create implementation user first. After completing the certain setups, then only you can create the employee user. The reason is, to create the employee user in the system, we need legal entity and business unit. Okay, so without selecting legal entity and business unit, you cannot create employee user. So that is the reason The fresh instance, when you start with the configuration, we will create the implementation user only. Implementation user definition is not required to select LE and business unit. Just you can give the username and password, and you can assign the required roles. Then you can start working on the system. Okay. So any questions on this point, please? We have few more points to discuss, but whatever just we are trying to understand. Any questions here, please?
Lakshman, this is Pradeep again. So security console, I hope you're referring to IDM.
So IDM, yes, if you know the term, then I have to explain something else. The IDM and all we have in release 11 only.
Oh, now did they change in R12?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that is the reason I'm not talking about it. So in release up to release 11, we have IDM, Identity Manager, or instead of IDM, you can call as OIM also, Oracle Identity Manager. And we have APM, Authorization Policy Manager. It will support to generate the roles, data roles automatically. Okay. Now these concepts we have, but we never, Oracle is not giving the access. Whatever you can do from this IDM, those now you can do from Security Console. Okay.
Interesting. So it's still part of the middleware. They just call it differently now.
Yes. The framework they are giving as a Security Console. You don't see somewhere as this is IDM, OIM, or APM. Okay. Whatever in IDM, what we could do in release 11, you can go and create the users and you can assign the roles. The same you can do the role customizations also. That's all you can do from the Security Console.
Okay.
Yeah, Lakshman, this is Niranjan Lakshman.
Yeah.
So if you create implementation user without employee user, can we perform all kind of activities in GL and subledgers?
Yes, you can perform
Data entry,
only the
data entry,
difference is,
validation.
in terms of privileges, only the difference is from employee user you can create the supplier sites. You cannot create supplier sites from implementation user. That is only the difference. With respect to finance, the rest all implementation user also will be able to perform if you give the permissions. Only the limit.
Oh, we have to give the permissions.
Yeah, for anything, any user you have to give the permission. Even for implementation user also you have to give the permissions to work on API or AR or anything, or to do the setups.
Okay.
Even if you give the permission to implementation user, still you cannot create the supplier sites. That is only the difference.
Okay, got it.
If you want to understand procurement point of view, implementation user cannot create any procurement related documents. Requisitions, purchase orders, or agreements cannot be created by implementation user. That can be performed by only employee user.
So is it because to avoid any business conflicts?
So business conflicts not because implementation user there is no specification where he belongs to which business unit, which legal entity. That specification you cannot have with the implementation user. And one more point here to understand. So in case of EBS also, if you want to create the purchasing documents and if you want to process that user, to that user you have to assign the employee, and that employee should be classified as a buyer, right? You have to create that employee as a buyer. That employee should be associated with the respective user. Then that user will be able to process the documents. Okay.
Right. Yeah, I'm clear. I think the main reason is to avoid any bypassing and all, right?
Yes, that should be happen through some employee only.
Yeah.
So that is even they given here. What happens is the employee user you can create as a buyer. Implementation user you cannot create as a buyer. Okay. The implementation employee user you can convert as a buyer. Implementation user you cannot convert as a buyer. Here the buyer only, just the term we are using as a procurement agent. Now I can say the point as only procurement agent can create the supplier sites. Only procurement agent can create the supplier sites, not implementation user. Implementation user cannot be classified as a procurement agent. Employee user can be classified as a procurement agent. Okay. Now the point is,
Yeah, Lakshmana. Yeah, we got it. So wherever like employee related activities should be done through only employee user. Say
exactly.
example like in AR we have the adjustment activities.
Yes.
So we need to have the certain limits. For that one, we need to have the employee user. Okay, got it.
Yeah. But they are not connecting this point to everywhere. So whatever you are talking about, adjustments and all, for that you can perform from implementation user also. The invoice creation,
Okay.
payment creation, receivables billing, receipt, assets.
No, but we have certain adjustment activities generally we apply to the transactions, right? For that one, we need to have the approval limits.
Yes.
So
that can approval
that can be done.
Set for employee implementation user, that can be possible. That will.
Oh, that can be possible.
Possible.
Okay.
Even for reality, the transactions also should be processed by employee only, right? The invoice creations and all.
Correct.
Everything is allowed, but only they set some limitation for supplier sides with respect to finance related process. Rest everything can be done by implementation user also.
Okay.
Only one point they may just classify that should be performed by employee user, who is classified as a procurement agent. Being an employee user directly, they cannot create supplier sites. Employee user need to be classified as a procurement agent, then that employee will be able to create the supplier sites. And another point is, when you have access to fresh instance, straight away you cannot create the employee user. The reason is, if you want to create the employee user, we require legal entity and business units. We know in the fresh instance, so you have to create everything. Till the time you'll be working with the implementation user. Implementation user definition doesn't require any specifications like LEs and BUs. So simply you can give the username and password and give the required roles, then that user can start working on the system for configuration process. So once we are ready with LE and BU, then we can start creating the employee user. From that time onwards, you can proceed with the further configuration or process with employee user only. Okay.
Yeah, Lakshman, are you going to share this Excel file after the session?
This Excel file I may not share. It's I'll be using for classes.
Okay.
Just make a note if you think something you want to remember.
It would be better, right, if you share it to everyone.
Yeah, if required, this initial 2-3 sessions I'll be sharing them if you want this.
Yeah, please share.
2-3 sessions I'll be sharing. Going forward, what are the actual sessions I'll be taking? Those may not be required. It's all about module specific discussions and the setups. Already everything I given in the course curriculum also. The same I'll be following, be performing. But initial 2 to 3 sessions, if you require, yes, I'll share it.
Okay, Lakshman, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Fine.
So Lakshman, one more clarification I have on this. So when we use implementation user, so that user is only specific to the configuration of the entire to configure this for Fusion application?
No, implementation user also can perform the transactions. Implementation user can perform the setups as well as transactions. In the same way, employee user also can perform setups and process, but the difference is certain privileges. Here the big difference only which you can see in finance case, employee user can create supplier sites. Implementation user cannot create supplier site. Implementation user can create supplier, but not supplier site. Employee user along with the supplier definition, sites also can be created. That is only the difference with respect to our finance.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm trying to understand why then in the why these two users has been given in this Fusion. That's what I'm trying to understand. In case if employee user can do
one point, the same point just now we discussed. When you start with your fresh implementation, do you think you will have a legal entities and business units ready in the system?
No, it has to be created. Yeah.
If you want to create, you need access to the system. You require a user, right? So in that case, you will be creating the implementation user first. You'll create implementation user, you will complete all the setups. Then whenever you have LEs and BUs ready, then you'll start creating the employee users.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay.
To start with
Thank
the
you.
system process, we'll be creating the implementation user. With the implementation user only, we'll start the system configuration. Fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Any other questions here, please? Okay. So the one more point here to understand when I talk about implementation user. So we have to assign the specific roles to implementation user. Okay. The roles are application implementation consultant role, IT security manager, and employee. Okay, primarily we have to assign these three roles to implementation user. So what is the purpose of application implementation consultant? So this would be allowing us to do all the setups, okay, to perform the setups. So in case of EBS, from the different responsibilities will be doing the relevant setups, but in the Fusion, all the setups you can do from one place, that is FSM, stands for functional setup manager. Okay, what is the purpose of this FSM? To configure any application related setups. You don't need to do any switching and all. From functional setup manager, you can do any application, GL related AP, AR, CM, FA, and inventory, purchasing, order management. Any application related setups you can do from functional setup manager. How to get access to functional setup manager? With the help of application implementation consultant role. When you just do comparison what type of role this is, the role type would be job role. This will be using only for setup purpose, not to record the transactions. We have a separate roles for setups and transactions. The application implementation consultant role will give us access to FSM, functional setup manager. So by using from functional setup manager, we'll be able to do any application related configuration. Another role is IT security manager. So IT security manager is similar to your system administrator in EBS. So this IT security manager role will give you access to security console. The security console, what you can do, you can create the users and you can create the custom roles and you can assign the roles to user, assign roles to users. All these activities you can do from security console. And employee, some self-service from here only you can just will be able to perform you can run the reports, etc. So very primarily these three roles you have to assign to the user so that user can work as implementation user. So you will create one user called as ABC implementation user, will be assigning these three roles, then that user can create the setups. If you want to allow that user to perform any transaction, we have a separate roles. These roles you can assign to implementation employee user also. If you assign these roles to employee user, employee also will be able to perform the setups, and employee can have access to security console and they can run the reports, and all the activities can be done by any user. You can assign to any user, but when you start with implementation, we'll be assigning to the implementation user, then these roles will give the access to these areas. Any questions on this, please? Okay, so this is what we have to understand about users. We have a two type of users, implementation user and employee user. So implementation user will be creating from security console, employee users are created from HCM. And when you create the employee user, we require LE and business unit association with that employee. So there are some dependencies also. If you are creating the LEs and BUs, means by the time you have to complete your primary ledger definition There are a few additional dependency setups also which will be completing from HCM. Those will see very detailed level when we start with our sessions. Okay, system related practice. So when you start with the implementation, first we'll go with the implementation user. Once we are ready with the required setups like these definitions, then we'll create an employee user. Okay, and these are the roles required for the user who want to work on the system as a consultant. So these roles will give access to these areas. Each role will application implementation consultant will allow us to do the setups. If you want to have access to security console where you can create the new users and you want to create the custom roles and you want to assign any role to the user, we require IT security manager role to the user and employee to run the reports and to have a self-service access. Okay, any questions on this, please?
Self-service access means exactly what?
The payroll related, you want to see your pay slip. You want to see your employee definition. You want to see the expense reports which you raised, which you created. Okay, so this information. Fine.
Lakshman, is this employee role an abstract role?
So Balaji, seems to there is some issue from your end. It's going, so I just kept on mute. Okay. So any other questions from anyone, please?
What is the role used for performing transactions?
So those are module specific, application specific. If you take example for AP, primarily Oracle is providing the 3 roles: payables manager, payables supervisor, payables specialist. The same if you take GL, we have a different 5 roles they are providing for GL. You can create how many you required, but as a CDET they are providing 5, like say general accountant, general accounting manager, account analyst, okay, chief financial officer, controller. These are the 5 roles Oracle is providing. The same way for receivables also, in the same way like a receivables manager, okay, receivables specialist, billing manager, billing specialist. This is how we have a different roles. We'll see that once we start with the system, we should assign those roles and we'll be giving the data access for the roles and we'll see the process. So any other questions on this, please?
Lakshman, quick question. So just to have a good idea in terms of the definitions on change in the naming convention here, is there a list or something that we could read through before we attend class so that we can connect while we are practicing, like definitions like in terms of roles and all that?
No, I don't see that kind of information anywhere. Only that once you go through these application and our discussions, you may come to know all those by the time of course completion. I don't see some consolidated document which talks about exact these naming conventions or change. These concept they taken from so and so product, and that sort of documentation is not available.
I understand that Fusion has the help button and all, but I was hoping
even
since Fusion is
you
a
don't
big
see
product
information. Okay, you don't see that information by comparing
at all.
other versions or applications. Straight away they'll be giving the information. This is a purpose. This function we will use, and this is how it would be useful. That sort of information only. So this rest everything we should come up with some discussions only.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be discussing. If you have any query, just you can raise that point. You can stop me. You can raise that point, or else whenever we get time to discuss questions, you can ask me. We can talk on that.
Yeah, certainly. I don't want to take up the other class time, so at least if we can have 15-minute session later on at the end of the class, that'll be great.
Yeah, definitely. But there will be a few things which you should understand immediately. That may become somewhat so sharper for you to understand certain things. Those points you can raise immediately. Going forward, the number of questions will drastically reduced since the certain information will be getting, and that because of that reason, the number of questions may get reduced. Okay.
Lakshman, I have a question.
Yeah.
In my company, they created accounting manager and payable employee, and in between there is payable supervisor. And when we want the payable to be reported to supervisor to approve the invoices and other things, the Oracle implementation team says that it is not possible right away. Either the accounting manager has to create alert vacation alert, or there is some procedure they say, but they are saying it is not possible. Is it not possible to create another role to give the access?
You can create. It's a very simple. You can copy the same role, same privileges you require, means you can copy the role, and accordingly you can do the setups. And if when you talk about approvals, anyway, user level also you can set the approvals, or else you can set supervisory. We have a great flexibility.
Actually, they are waiting for that for 3 months and they are not doing it. I don't know why.
Maybe you may have experts in the team sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Fine. Thanks. So any questions in this point, please? I think it's already 9:30. So we'll just continue with the other few points. Okay, anyway, just so we have to find this functional setup manager and rapid implementation data conversions. We'll discuss in the tomorrow session. Along with that, we'll see how to create the implementation user in the system also. Any questions on today's session or any other generic questions, please? If no questions, we can wind up.